No.
I can't.
This is what in the world is the date? The 10th?
Yes.
November the 10th, work session of the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of Trustees. We are here today with one agenda item, and that is to discuss the potential change to a vendor for our policy revision and creation. So, and we have 5 members present today, Dr. Yin and Mr. Wong, Mr. Schott, and Vice President Marley and myself. And then we have virtual attendance from Mrs. Mumford, Member Mumford, and Member Austin. We are not taking any votes today. There will be no decisions made. This is just a fairly complex decision, and we wanted to make sure that we reviewed all the detail of it so people could be prepared to come in and have a productive vote in our Monday meeting, one way or the other. Saying that, it is important that anyone not today profess their decision, if that makes sense. So this is about information sharing, not telling everybody else what your decision or your vote will be. That will be held for the meeting portion. This is, if you will, like a study review. So with that said, I also want to call to your attention, this is something that's been brought up for about three or 4 months now that we've been talking about potentially making this change. We deferred it until we could have a lengthier conversation in work session after the referendum. And it would be remiss of me to not, in this our first public gathering, take this opportunity to congratulate and express appreciation to our community for their support. To come in at 80.4%, which is higher than projected. Really indicates the level of support from our community, particularly on a low turnout election year. They really came out and voted for us and voted for our students this year. So I'm sure we'll address that in a more, when we have more people present who worked on that in the YES committee. They were phenomenal, as well as Dr. Greiner and his staff, who have become the media darlings over the past few days, which has been a lot of fun to watch. And so anyway, I have to pause there and say thank you to all of you and everyone who is engaged and worked for the referendum. Makes a big deal for our schools. So because this has been going for so long, this conversation, there has been a folder, as you're aware, on Box that has given you reference information, and those were labeled as confidential. Some of that information remains confidential. So Churchill and Antrim, who are legal counsel and who have come forward to with this proposal that we are considering, of what they provided to us initially remains confidential. We went back to them in the past week and requested a document that could be public. And so that's what we're discussing. They had some other examples and things in their original presentation. They did not wish to be public. They consider that to be proprietary information, or would share information inappropriately about other clients that they have. So please be aware of that as you're looking at documents and asking questions. In particular, we would not want to mention another school corporation's content unless, as we were just talking about before the meeting started, Mrs. Cronk is going to share some recommendations with us today. Anybody, any questions about what we're doing today?
Yes, I can't find that public document. Where's the one that you said they can?
It's in our, if you go to our meeting documents, for our board meeting documents, and you look for today's work session, there is a document in there.
Got it.
There is still a red, it says vendor information, CCHA versus Neola. At the top of it, there is a red note that says for, I got the right file open. Might be giving you the wrong header.
Yeah, this is the This is the one that's private, so.
Was the other one put into the board documents for the meeting, the regular meeting?
So this is not,
The regular board
Regular
meeting.
board meeting,
Okay,
okay.
so Daisha, you'll find the public information is going to be in our regular meeting file for Monday's meeting. So it's already in there so that it can go public. So what is private is in the vendor information work session. That includes their pricing model. We are going to talk pricing model today, but not with this level of detail. So if you go back to our regular meeting file for Monday, the 13th, in there you're going to see legal services review. That's document 14. You're also going to see,
Found it, thank you.
yeah. Trying to scroll down here and see if there was another one. Nope, that's the only one. Okay. All right, so just we'll kick off with a little bit of background for some of you new members, for anybody watching online. We originally contracted with Neola. The primary, and I don't recall the year exactly, I'm sorry. When we contracted with Neola, we did so because all of our policies were still offline. They were still written paper. We had them in binders in the corporation office. And if anyone wanted to know about policy, staff or community member or board member, we had to refer to those paper documents. So one of the primary objectives of switching to Neola was to digitize and make available to the community our policies. At that time, it was tens of thousands of pages. And so, and they had been written in a lot of different formats. They had been developed over a long period of time. They did not cross-reference well. There were some other issues with them. They were outdated. So a group met and we started working through those. And over a period of, I think, 3 years, Brad and Tom, does that seem right to you? We reviewed clusters of our policies in board meetings. Some required single review, some required double review, but every single policy was reviewed over that 3-year period of time. And as they were reviewed, then when they were done, everything went online for our community to see as a library. Since that time, Neola's process is to submit twice-a-year updates and then specialty updates as needed with their recommendations. The other piece of this that we were supposed to move into after our policies were done were administrative guidelines. The administrative guidelines step between the policy and the practice in the schools. So the plan was for, at the time, Dr. Killian to work on those administrative guidelines once we completed the policy. As you are aware, a little thing called COVID happened. That piece of it was interrupted. We obviously were not going to have an interim superintendent initiate that process. So we deferred that process to Dr. Greiner, who has been here now at this point less than 2 years, a little less than 2 years, and has not initiated that yet, but we are drawing close to that point where we've known they're needed. He has enough knowledge and experience and awareness of our community and how our schools work to be able to do that in a competent manner. And that is part of what has triggered this conversation now, because what we have from Neola, and I'll allow you to speak on this, doesn't feel like the best foundation for us going forward in terms of developing those administrative guidelines. And so that's really what we're here to talk about, is if we want Dr. Greiner we want to continue with Neola at the current pay structure and the current process and have him initiate that administrative guidelines process, or if we want to make a change to our legal counsel, streamline a lot of what we're doing, and then have him do those administrative guidelines. Did I give the background on that in a succinct enough manner?
You really did. So
Okay.
I don't have much to add. I will just add that Mrs. Roth and I have met with Mr. Grazier, who is the representative for us, for Neola representative for us. And we sat down over the summer and understand the process to move into developing those administrative guidelines. We held off because if you recall, it was in the middle of summer that the board discussed that possibly Churchill would be the direction we go. So we haven't moved into that yet. We're ready to. Our plan is to do it as policies are reviewed. We'll sit down, we'll go through those. We'll work with our legal counsel for advisement too, because she's very helpful there. But we will do that only if we know we're staying with Neola. So that's that, and the referendum and some other things, as you know, we've been working on. Those are things that have caused us to hold off. The major point being, are we sticking with Neola? Because we wouldn't want to continue that process if we're not.
Correct. The Neola structure and process is a little bit different than the church process. And we believe that there will be fewer policies. If you took the opportunity to review the website of the school corporation we sent, you would have noticed that it's a much more streamlined process, a lot fewer words, a lot easier for a community to read and understand, and for teachers and staff to read and understand. That combined with administrative guidelines, we think would make for a very good base for our school corporation. But I don't know where everyone is with this, and I would welcome questions at this point in time about what materials you've been given and what your thoughts are about information you might need to make a decision.
So it seems like some of the policy are in multiple places. Is that necessary? Is that confusing? Just seems like when I was on policy committee, we reviewed the same thing in 3 different sections, and they applied 3 different places. I get that, but it just seemed too much, but maybe that's necessary.
Well, I will say, Mr. Shaw, you make a good point that the way now we kind of look at each other, in some instances it would be necessary, but if we were to go with Church Hiddle, you've got someone that can come and meet and answer questions right before the board. I think it would be more interactive. That question, we could say, let's get Jesse here, Mrs. Billingsley here, and let's talk.
The structure is set by state that we would have the 1,000s, the 2,000s, the 3,000s. So they have, well, some of it could change, as I understand it from her. If we stay with Neola, that would remain the same, sure. Right? But because that's their model, some of it would definitely would be streamlined, because you're right, there is a lot of, who am I talking about? Oh, that's in the 8,000s. You should go and try and define it.
My colleagues did say about Church and Church that they've used them for a few years now, that anytime that there might be like a complex policy or something with a change in legislation, that they do come to the board meeting to explain it if there are any questions.
And you had another reference as well.
Yeah, so I had 2 different references, colleagues that I've worked with for past 11 years. One, if there are any law changes, Church and Church immediately makes changes and sends red line versions of the policies to the school corp. They don't have to prod them for them. It allows them the confidence that something isn't going to be missed somewhere, especially in years where there are a lot of changes like this past year. And then my other contact actually used to use Church and Church, switched to Neola, and then they decided to switch back because they believe Church and Church tailored the policies more towards the school corporation and what they do rather than being a boilerplate.
Are there any other questions from any board members about the information you've been provided here? Dr. Yin?
I may have missed something, but from this file, I didn't see the chart.
So that's in the confidential file. If you go back to the confidential file, their fee structure is in there.
We've added some information here too in the
So
new.
not
In the new, yeah.
not the file 14.
It's not, you may, so if you are just not logged out and back into Box, you may not be able to see.
I'm going to let you have this one
Yeah.
because I've actually got it pulled up electronically. This will show you some process.
Basically, it was not, we had to negotiate with Church to get what they would allow us to put publicly. So they can't share their fees with one client with another client.
Yeah,
And so,
I have this file, but not the price.
yeah. I think it was added on to your box document, so if you've not logged out and logged back in, you may not be able to see the amendment to the document.
It's in there.
Is it there?
So anecdotally, if we signed up with Church Hill and they do what they say they're gonna do, including the fee up front and then the updates for 2,000, it's 18,000 a year. And if you add up everything that we've done with Neola, including the guidelines contract, conversion to an E-system or an E-policy, plus all the updates that we did over the last 12 months, the total is $22,000. We got some cushion to work with Church Hill, Antrim. And the thing is, boilerplate is not good at all. We really need a policy that our council basically hand carries and presents to us. And when there are changes, they're in the room talking about the changes. Whereas Neola, we're on our own, unless we call outside counsel, which we would need to do, and then we've got another cost. So this just makes sense to go with our legal firm.
We were lucky for a lot of years to have Doug Massey.
Correct.
Yeah, we did have a board member that had a legal background, and
And even after he left the board, he still volunteered.
yeah.
So in
Yeah, I
those,
think I'm understanding, is the 16,000 for the conversion, correct?
Yes.
And then it's just 2,000 a year, is the estimated, unless it's a heavy year of legislation.
correct.
And so sometimes it would be a little less, and we've seen that the way they project that out, they've been pretty consistent with regard to whether or not we see extra charges from their typical retainer.
Their counsel. I will say that a lot of the work that we end up doing kind of in-house, in staff on these policy changes is, and a lot of what Doug did for us was to review and cross-match Indiana codes because those were not always lined up correctly. And so Indiana code citations are required. And there was a lot of cross-checking this and that to make sure that they line up. It's not glamorous work, but
And we should also realize that none of us, and there never will be another Karen Springer who
Correct.
meticulously looked over these things. So
correct.
We do need
I agree.
quote unquote help.
Yeah, we do. We do. And I think the other piece of this that has come up since we changed legal counsel, it definitely happened with our prior legal counsel as well. They did a lot of policy review for us, but Church has also continued to do policy review for us. And they've done a very nice job, even when it's provided by Neola and we've got questions about what can be changed and what cannot. They've done a really nice job of offering some counsel on that as part of their regular retainer. Is that
That's correct.
fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I was not clear on one thing on here. What does the hosting look like for this? Because this is is there an additional technology fee or charge that we'll have to cover to host it?
We already pay for board docs.
Okay, so that'll remain
It
the
wouldn't be
same.
additional. I believe it would remain the same.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
Or
document
if you
could go.
clarify that, we pay for board docs in addition to paying Neola to use board docs?
Do what now? I didn't.
She asked if we pay board docs in addition to Neola using board docs. So are they,
Let me look, okay? Let me-
Michelle
let
will
me
look that up
look
for you, Mrs. Mumford. Mr. Wong, you had a question?
Yeah, Dr. Brenner, I just heard you talk about the price they offer, so that's not confidential information.
If you look at the one that Dr. Yen has, and I do see now why it's not in yeah,
So that can be, we can talk about the
we can talk
price.
about that, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, and then,
And I don't think Mrs. Mumford will see that. Well, she sees it. What you see price-wise in the box,
which one is confidential?
the box,
The box.
but we asked her to give the prices in that document that Dr. Yen has. And so, yeah,
She did not want us to share what was in box, but what Brad just cited and what's on that document could be discussed publicly. And that will go into the meeting documents later today.
I want to ask if she's.
We've been down to the wire, kind of juggling, getting all things in a format that could be public, because typically a board might not have, we were just trying to anticipate board member questions and be flexible, so Jesse's been working to be flexible. Dr. Yin, did you also have a question?
Yes, and I wonder whether the church has worked with other school districts and have their policy online we can use as a reference to
So that's
see.
in the box file. That was the one that was sent to you this summer. You can click directly on the link to a school corporation and go and look at their policies. That was in the vendor review file that was put out. I don't think it was July. Was it July? Might have been August. But yeah, there's a link to a school corporation there. And you can look they're fully created by church with that school corporation. That we cannot make public.
So for example, right now we cannot say what school district have their policy created by Neola.
Well, there's a sample one in there that's fully created by
But I
them.
remember our policy has Neola's name on it everywhere, right? Is that the case? But the
Right.
church doesn't do that. When they
They
does a
do,
file for a
right?
district, they don't put their name on it.
I believe that they will have some logoing on it, but it's not ours to share. So that we could share our policy with our logo on it, but we could not share another school corporation's policy. It just wouldn't be collegial.
Even though it's a public.
If you want to go look it up, you could do that, but they've provided a link for you specifically to a school corporation that they've done in entirety.
Mrs. Billingsley responded, you would have to do that separately or host on district site yourself. Church Hiddle does not do online hosting, so.
Right, that's what it would be, have to be board docs.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't
I think that that's the part I wasn't clear on. In my mind, Neola includes the board docs hosting.
It might be possible,
Yeah, and so that's why
and that's probably why I can't find it.
yeah, I don't know what that separate fee would be.
What, yeah, do we know what?
Because I
Board
pay
docs cost?
at Kokomo, we pay the Indiana School Boards Association for board docs. And so I don't see that we pay for board docs with the Indiana School Boards Association.
Do you recall what that fee was?
Mm.
Do you recall what that fee was?
Yes, I don't.
I was trying to compare it to the fees from Neola here.
So it looks like, according to Brad's calculations, and I tend to trust Brad on calculations, we have about $2,000 of gap there.
Yeah.
Is that
Closer to 6.
closer? Oh, well,
But,
I was gonna say 4.
but not for annual maintenance, correct?
Took me 3 minutes to run them out.
okay, good.
Well, the annual maintenance fee for digital publication for Neola is $750.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Would probably be
That's,
docs.
if that's the fee, that's why I was asking, because I see the 750.
That's 4. Be much harder.
Now, board docs would probably cost us a little bit more than $750.
Because they're getting it in
But
a
there's
bulk.
also other aspects of board docs that we could start to use as well too. So that's something to take into consideration.
Okay. Would it be possible for us to get a quote on that fee before Monday's meeting?
Ms. Julian, do you think we can contact board docs and get a quote?
She's nodding yes. Okay. I think that would be a helpful part of the equation to find that out. And Dr. Yin, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, it'll be totally helpful to list all the fees, including the hosting, because right now the annual maintenance fee from Neola covers the web space or something. I just trying to figure out, whether these two fees are comparable, right?
Yeah. Mrs. Julian will try and get us a quote before
Okay.
Monday's meeting so we can add it on to the church quote.
Right, and another thing to clarify is we already paid the Neola the flight fee before, right? So the 10,000 fee was paid.
That's correct.
And so that means if we start with the church, then we need to pay another new flight fee.
That's correct.
So besides the annual fee.
That's correct.
So we need to put all these things in formula, there to compare. And content-wise, I haven't found the information about other school districts and how many other school districts, for example, in Indiana, are using church.
Do you remember when we did our legal review? You were on the committee that did the legal review.
And
When we
I,
approved church
that's a
Hill,
long time ago.
I
don't
know,
re-
okay, so what I'm saying is they had a list of corporations they worked with.
Yes, I know that, but I
Okay.
don't know,
We can
like,
probably go back
if,
and
let's
find
say they work with Carmel, but I don't know whether Carmel's policy was made by them.
I don't either.
That's two different things.
No, I understand that, but that's good. That'd be a good place to start, to see the corporations they actually work with.
I am,
Yeah.
I will go back and try and identify where the link is. I'm fairly certain it is in the work session, but I will go look for it right now and see if I can direct you to where that is.
Yeah.
I think that I went and reviewed the policy structure for the sample school corporation provided, and it was crisp and clean and very impressive, but I would want you to make your own decision about that. So I want to find that, and so every member can be renewed on where that information is in box and can take a look at it. Because I think there's some benefits to understanding that.
So is there only one school district currently that have used them to do their policy cleanup?
No.
No. They've just provided us one school corporation that they've done completely. So from stem to stern, which is what we're proposing having them do, stem to stern, review all of the policies and create it. They have sent us one sample for that. And specifically, they are a school corporation, as I understand it, that Jesse worked with.
Jesse told me yesterday they have about 20 districts that have fully converted and about 10 in progress.
Did you all hear that? Okay. So if you are in box, I'll just back up for a second. What you're looking for is a document from June 6th. We have been talking about this since June 6th. The name of the file is vendor information, and in it, Church provides an example of a complete one on the second page. So you can click the link and see it over the weekend when you want to take a look. There was a file uploaded to Box on June 6th when we started talking about this. And the name of it is Policy Vendor Review. And in it is the document that has vendor information, and there is a link in that.
For 2023 board meetings?
It's in all files.
Oh,
All files. So in June, when we started talking about it and kind of stopped on administrative guidelines, we created that file so that board members would have plenty of time to review the content and be ready for conversation when the time came.
I do want to say, and we'll get this side by side for you, because one thing we want to compare is what is the cost of board docs if we take board docs on our own. But I think the comparison will show you the $12.95 twice a year this is after the conversion, because there's $16,000 conversion, where they truly go in and personalize the policies for our districts. That takes time, like it did for Neola to do several years ago. But after that, the annual fee is on average $2,000 a year. But then we would need to add in the cost of the board docs maintenance, whatever that would be, going alone one-on-one with board docs. And then right now, our annual fee is $12.95 with Neola twice a year, plus the $7.50 for the digital maintenance fee, which is your board docs. So we can get that side by side for you. But like you said, Dr. Yin, we would have to consider that it would be a one-time conversion.
So the question I think that is important to touch on is what you asked about, Dr. Yin. Here we've paid the $10,000 for the conversion fee, and now we're talking about paying for a conversion fee again. Understand, and you might be inclined to think, well, we should utilize where we've already converted with. The difficulty is, and Neola's done a great job, so I don't want this to sound disparaging of them in any way. They came into what was truly a mess. We were in the dark ages on policies, and they led us through a very intense process to convert that, update that, and convert that. Dr. Springer and Doug Masson and I and Dr. Killian were I can't even begin to tell you how many hours we put. And with Neola's support all the way through. So I don't feel, I'm just giving you my firsthand perspective, I don't feel that $10,000 conversion was in any way a waste. It did something crucial for us at a crucial time, which was get our policies online for people to see and use. And it was a matter of also avoiding any legal liability because some of our policies were outdated enough to cause concern using language or situations that weren't appropriate to task. So one policy that we kind of joked about continually all the way through is that we had a policy on the books that we were not allowed to give anyone a microwave oven as a reward for work done for us. That was on the books in the West Lafayette policies until 2020. So I think, there were just some things in there that were not professional. They had gotten to an age where it was not appropriate and they needed to be done. And I think that we worked very hard as a board through that time to review every single policy and update it and digitize it. So I don't feel that 10,000 for Neola was a waste, but I think the question we have to make now, the decision we have to make now as a board is, and this is the recommendation of our superintendent, is to continue changing ships right now, to step it up to the next level of professionalism. Dr. Yin?
Yes, first of all, I think it would be very helpful to have all the full price comparison. Another thing, I heard about one benefit, potential benefit is it will be cheaper and in the long run to go church. Another one is about the content. And so until now, I haven't found the content reference from the folder I can see here. And so maybe I still miss something. I would like to study that after I know the access to it. And so talking about the content besides the file that I will be able to see, and just now Michelle said church is has already converted 20 school districts policy and is working on the other 10. So that information would be helpful as well, because I always feel, at least from my previous experience, whenever I have some, concerns about certain policy, I like to go to other school districts to see what they say about this or that. And so it's nice and helpful to have a reference. And but if our district is very different from some other counterparts districts like CAMO as well, TSC, LSC, those school districts that we often use as a reference, and I feel that would be very inconvenient, and because I do appreciate that kind of similarity and the comparison that I can make.
Michelle, do we have, does one of the corporations that you asked for the reference on, do they have their policies posted online? If one of them does,
I know all of them do, yeah.
let's give one of those to the board now.
Well, so
that
they already have one. They've had one since June 6th.
They,
Oh, they
they
can
already have the one school that was in the document for today.
Okay,
That was provided to the full board on June 6th,
Well,
and it's there and available, and Dr. Yin is able to look at it now.
let's make sure we can get there so that
Yeah. So that's the one I just pulled to. If you go to all files,
okay.
policy vendor review file folder. If you scroll to the second page, halfway down, there is a link. An example of policies, policy organization can be viewed here. I don't want to announce the name of that school corporation, but if you click on that link, it will take you directly to their website and you can take a look at their work. They have a very nice website. So yeah, we put that out early so board members would have plenty of time to really examine their work. Policy vendor review.
I have a couple questions.
Sure. Mrs. Mumford?
So if I'm understanding correctly, we're looking at kind of 3 different prices. We're looking at a price for policy cleanup. we're looking at a price for what they charge for maintenance policy updates. And then it looks like they've also included for Neola the administrative guidelines fee. So is that what I understand correctly? We have 3 different things we're talking about in regards to using Neola or Church Hiddle.
You are looking at that correctly, Mrs. Mumford.
Okay, so my question is, have we asked Neola? So I agree, our policies need cleaned up. You know, currently they're not internally consistent. They do need modernized on certain things. Would Neola provide that? You know, before we paid them to help us put it online, would they come in and help us clean up is one question. Also, I know ISBA offers these same services. I'd like to hear what their price would be to provide it. And are there any others? So those are the only 3 I've heard of is, you know, from us doing legal, using our legal counsel, ISBA and Neola. Could we get quotes from those other ones?
I'm writing this down, Mrs. Mumford.
I don't know that we would, I will just say, in my opinion, I don't know that we would want Neola to do part of the work and then double back and redo the policies and then have to redo the administrative guidelines. I think that would be a significant duplication of work.
Explain that better to me. Sorry, I'm not understanding. Having
Sure.
them
So what Church has discussed, correct me if I'm wrong, but what they have discussed is it is a restructure of policies to eliminate some of the redundancy and some of the inconsistencies. They have looked at our policies as we've had policy issues come up. We have taken them to Church for feedback, for information. So as you know, we have one now and we sent that to legal to get feedback on. And as they have looked at our policies through that process and also through staff and student concerns, they have come to us and said, your policies are bulky. This would be a complete reset. So the board over the next however long would review all of our policies again in a new format. We would repeat the process that we did several years ago on every single policy, because any changes to the policy have to be taken to the public meeting. So it would not make sense to have Neola do administrative guidelines with us and go through that process and then have all the policies on which those administrative guidelines were made change.
Can
Oh, sorry.
I add
That's
to?
not, I wasn't asking about that.
No, I know, Ms. Mumford, I think what you were asking, so I want to explain why I went to, why I recommended this consideration in the first place. Yes, to answer your question, can Neola assist with cleanup of the current policies? That was one of the questions, correct? They could do that and we could meet with them. The difference, what interested me in working and the board working with Mrs. Billingsley is the more personalization, because they're our attorney and they work with us directly. So when I've gone to her and said, hey, we've got this staffing issue, for example, guide me, help me address this and cover all policies. Here's where I think we are, but further guide me to keep us legally sound. And our attorney will do that. She'll go in and, of course, and work with us and link policies and so forth. And that's where Mrs. Billingsley has said a few times, it's hard sometimes to find because it's bulky. And because of their legal expertise coupled with their understanding of our corporation and the board, you who she serves, that'll become more intimate and less bulky because she will work with the board to further streamline it, to further align it to where we stand as a board, keeping the board legally compliant also, of course, with like Neola does. And Neola keeps us aligned to Indiana code, but they are also serving multiple districts as policy development and not as legal review. And so what I like is, one, if our team has to go and work on a legal issue with Church Hiddle, they're very, very aware of all of our policies. Two, they're able to keep them less bulky because they're personalizing based on the legal services they provide to us. And three, they're going to be going through those policies with me anyway if we as a corporation get into a big issue. Does that make sense?
It does. I think my question is, does Neola provide, this service of simplifying our policies and modernizing them? What would that cost be if we wanted to ask them to do kind of the same process that we're asking Church Hiddle to do?
That occurs now every 6 months. So yes, they will do that, and we can have a representative come out. It's that was my point. So there's not a cost. That's all. That's part of it. In the same way that it's ongoing. The reviews are ongoing with Church Hiddle once we make the conversion. The 16,000 is the conversion piece. The board did that several years ago with Neola. So the answer is yes, they will continue to modernize. They do that every 6 months, and or when there's special reviews, they do that for us. That's part of their retainer fee.
I guess my question is for policy cleanup. So looking at the big picture, we need someone to go through and clean up these policies. There's several options. We do that locally. We do that with a committee and do it locally and then submit it. Everything would need to be submitted for legal counsel. We pay Church Hiddle to do it. My question is ISBA, what would their cost be? And then Neola, would they come in and provide the same sort of service, not their twice a year maintenance fee?
So Neola has already provided that service once, so we should expect that the quality of policies provided will be similar to the quality of policies that we already have in place, which is.
But and again, they wouldn't charge to do that again.
Right.
They would just say.
Well, I think they would limit the number. They wouldn't do a comprehensive
That's what
review.
I believe. So
They're going
I
to
don't think
limit
they
the
would
number.
do a complete overhaul again. It's just those ones that they would recommend to be changed, like
Correct.
they do twice a year already.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as for ISBA, it is conveniently available on their website. It is not a comprehensive review. The pricing that they have listed has a maximum of up to 15 policies a year for their review. So while the price point is much lower, on paper, they're not talking about a comprehensive review. They're talking about a support service. Now, we could be able to purchase that for them, but to me, I would have some concerns about doing that because then we've got two different legal counsels advising. In my experience, most often when issues of policy come up that are very sensitive and difficult, it is related to personnel issues. And they're very confidential. They require a lot of care from Dr. Greiner and legal counsel, and our policy is very important in those matters that it be crisp. Also, Mrs. Julian has arranged for a 9 a.m. Call with board docs to obtain a quote today. So we will have that before our Monday meeting.
And I'd also like to throw out there that board docs isn't necessary. We could post them on our website like several other school corporations do, and just be on our website and not necessarily have it hosted. Like I said, board docs also has other things that you could use it for if you would wish to explore that down the road as well. So,
Do you have interest in that? Do you have interest in using board docs more? Have you done that in the past?
that is what we use for all of our board documents at Kokomo. So we put, instead of using Box, we had everything on board docs.
Okay.
So my question is, I know of school districts, most use Neola. I do know when I've attended ISBA meetings that there are some that use ISBA instead of their legal counsel to do an overhaul. So I would love to see a quote on that, what that would cost. Because in talking to different groups, it does seem like there's different viewpoints. There's the viewpoint of have legal counsel give the first input and they just control it the whole way, or provide policy development and then have legal counsel review it. And, there's a lot of benefit to doing that and not just having legal counsel kind of dictate from the beginning, but making it more of what our local community wants in developing the policies and then having them review it. So I think having both more information from Neola. I still am not clear that Neola doesn't provide some of this cleanup more than they've been providing. There's still quite a few issues in our policies that I think they could help us with, and also what ISBA, I think that would help me make a decision better if I had more information.
We're going to collect more information. Mrs. Mumford.
Thank you.
And I will just say to you that the public does have input on policies. The board members do have input, but given we have no one with any legal expertise on this board, I would not, I would be concerned about a process where people without any legal experience, training, or expertise would be in charge of determining what policies they believe are in the best interest of schools. Policy recommendations actually come from our superintendent to the board, and we as a board consider them and make amendments to them and have conversation with them. So I know that there's been a lot of speculation about what the process looks like. There's been a lot of kind of mudslinging on this issue, but it is very appropriate for board officers to meet with the superintendent for an initial look at what policy is being provided, and what changes or what additional information might be needed for the board to review. So, for example, when we looked at the one last week that's coming into our meeting tomorrow, everyone on the board is going to see absolutely everything we saw when we looked at those policies. You already have it. It's in your board doc file. Those will be publicly available as part of our board docs for the meeting. One question that came out is there is a cross-reference to another policy in that proposed policy, and I was not comfortable, we who discussed it were not comfortable that it lined up correctly. And so in that situation, then Dr. Reiner went back to church and said, hey, we'd like to know how this policy relates to that one. So all that resulted from that meeting was additional information being given to the board. And that is, as I have said before, the doing of homework, right? To make sure that the board has everything that they need to make a decision on a policy. But I don't think that starting with the board members in charge of policy, which is frankly what was the situation before we went to Neola, I will just tell you that did not have a good outcome. So, Mr. Wong? Sorry, Mrs. Mumford, Mr. Wong is speaking.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Grant, I have this question. Basically, the things we talk about, there's duplicate, there's over cross-reference, that kind of things. We can work with Neola, right?
Yes, we
they
do.
can
work
get
with
that. So why we need to switch vendors?
The reason I would recommend to switch is it would be easier, I think, for the board and certainly for me to work directly with Church Hiddle, because I'm already working with them on legal services if we have legal issues.
Okay.
They better I don't want to say, but I'm not putting down Neola because Neola does a great job. They will personalize because they're working directly with you as your legal services. Neola's working with multiple schools, and so there starts as a boilerplate and you go down. And we can work with our legal counsel, but we would probably, if we start doing that at a greater level, we would be paying more money probably to do that, for their legal service to look at that above and beyond the
Okay.
retainer if we did it with multiple policies. So I think it could streamline, it could personalize both the policy and personalization to the board based on our district.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced. So there's maybe some case by case things, but majority of these policy, maybe 90%, 95% policy, no problem. So we already say we pay money for this, and we board members work together. We review all the things, the existing policy, they are in good standings. So now we redo everything. It's not only the money, also the policy committees, we hold school board and the community have to communicate. There are a lot of duplicate works. What I'm saying is 90% of the policy is pretty good. You see what I mean? Also, Neola, I mean, in terms of financially, I didn't see any benefit. So in terms of cost benefit,
Correct.
that's one thing. Another thing, Neola is kind of number one in policy management. And the policy management and the legal service, they are kind of different business. I mean, this Neola, they have 1,400 clients, schools in 6th Street. And they have not only the legal things, they also have the best practice, basically administration guidance, whatever you think. That's kind of best practice. So we can take advantage of that. And during the last several years, we worked together with a lot of manpowers already invest to upgrade these policy systems. So basically, we already encode our school's best practice into this coding system. I mean, now you say, you know what, we don't, we tear down all these things, we restart another thing. I think that's kind of, I mean, it's duplicated. We don't think we need to do that. Not only for the money, also the manpower. You have to assign somebody administrating the work with CCHA, right? Church, right? And they have the policy.
Church would do that for us. I would not be doing that.
Yeah, I know, but there were some hours in administration that work with them, and the policy committee review that and then submit to the board discussion and communicate. So we basically do everything. And also I checked the samples, school samples, they have about 100 policies, and they don't have a lot of details. I think the policy we have about 300 policies. I think that's pretty good policy from so far what I can tell. I mean, it's not perfect, but we can work on that with Neola, change this, change that, make that better. I think that's maybe better approach. But now seem to understand, from what my understanding is, seems we downgrade from premium service provided by the #1 vendors, policy management, the downgrade to a basic service and provided by a law firm. Well, the policy management is their side business. They have 20 clients and there's 10 working on. And I checked their policies, not as my personal opinion, it's not as good as what we have.
Your opinion and perspective are important to me because
No, that's I'm layman, you're the professional.
you're the board, and the board sets policy, and so I'm respectfully telling you, I hear what you're saying, and your opinion matters. And ultimately, if the board, we will go with the policy, and our team will make it work, and we will make it work well. So I value everybody's opinion, and when the board votes, I will respectfully move that way. So I'm thanking you for taking the time to share that, because the board sets the policy, and I respect that. So thank you, Mr.
No
Wong.
problem. And also regarding the pricing, the CC actually offered, I mean, it's much more expensive than the SBA. SBA they have some policy, 700, 500, that's first 15 policies, and after that, $50 per policy. They publish their website. So I think that will be the prevailing, the marketing cost of that kind of service. And when you compare that cost with the CCHA offered, I mean, that's only a fraction of the price they offer.
So we're going to restructure the pricing proposal that we've already concluded. Dr. Reiner's going to give us some more apples to apples comparison.
Okay.
I would encourage all board members, as part of your preparation for this vote, to more words is not necessarily better. So more policies is not necessarily better. And the thing I would suggest that board members do is take a recent situation that you could think of, or make one up in your head, and try and with fresh eyes go and look at how that would be guided by our current policies and how that would be guided by this other school corporation's policies. So float a boat and see how it feels to you in practice, because at some point that's where the rubber meets the road for Dr. Greiner, is when something happens, what does the legal structure look like to resolve that?
Great points, everybody. And Dr. Yates.
Oh, Dr. Yin?
Yeah, thank you for and the direction to that file with the example. And I do get a chance to look at their website, and I agree with what Lawrence just said about the kind of the quality. And so in addition, I'm not sure about the format here and whether it's because of this school or because of the church and the interface is not actually friendly, because you know, here if you click a policy, a PDF file will jump out. You got a new page, and if you click another one, another jump out. It's really messy. But the current one actually is much user friendly. You have the navigation on the left. You can click one, then you still keep your navigation and stay. But I'm not sure whether this is a school's preference or it's the church, the feature come with the church arrangement. And so it'll be helpful to have the other 20 school districts information as well, so we can see whether, again, it's a district issue or it's a provider's issue. And so
That's a great, but I will say that what you're describing is board docs. Is the one you're looking at board docs?
and ours is a board doc.
Yes, yeah.
And but the example is not.
Good,
It's-
okay,
yeah.
that's what I was gonna
It's
tell you.
on their actual website.
Yeah, so
They
what,
post it on their website.
yeah, what you're saying, I think, is very important, that regardless of where we go, you value as a board member, and probably suspect our public does, the board docs features, which is the platform we can put that on. So regardless of who our service provider was for the policies, you want something of the quality of board docs, is what I'm hearing you say, and I think that's an important point.
Yeah,
Okay,
so I'm not sure whether, it's a board doc feature.
You can use board docs with anything. Board docs is a separate service. We currently pay for it through Neola. If you do ISBA, you can pay through it through ISBA, or you can use it yourself. So it's another platform that you can use.
which can also encompass the box feature, what we do, what Roberta, Mrs. Julian does for the board communications through the files in box. I knew this from her a couple of months ago, but it can address that box feature too, because some corporations do
Okay.
use that feature.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, we are at 7:56. We are going to adjourn promptly at 8 a.m. So if you have any final questions, now would be the time. Anything that you need information-wise in order to make a vote on this issue on Monday, our timeline is that we would need to make a vote on Monday in the November meeting, because we would need to make this changeover in January. So we would present it in meeting, and then in December, we would, as I understand it, have selected vendor, if we made a vendor change, speak with us about it. Is that what you thought was happening?
Yes.
And then, so we would have that presentation in December, and then we would be ready to go in January. So if that is the timeline, if we make a change, if we don't make a change, then if it's not voted in the affirmative on Monday, then nothing changes and we continue business as we have been doing it. So, Dr. Yin?
Just to clarify it again, so you talk about like any more information. I would like to have the information about the other 20 school districts who have finished their conversion with the church. I also like to have a full list of the cost, including the board,
My computer died.
the Word doc and cost, and not because I really need this like a pure comparison, because the current one, they have their online maintenance, the fee and covered. I'm not sure whether the proposal given by church cover that. I don't want to, later, oh, there's another fee we, didn't say, and something like that. We needed to have a fair comparison.
Okay.
For all the cost without any hidden cost.
Anybody else? Any additional information that you require before the meeting that you'd like our administrators to take care of?
Yes, I have another one.
Go ahead.
I was curious, when you talk to Neola, if we can find out if they provide interactive, like attending the meetings. It sounds like this is one of the benefits you're sharing with Church Hiddle, is that they're willing to come to the meeting and talk to us. So I'm curious if Neola provides that, and also curious to understand more why Neola is providing 2 policy updates per year. And if that can be just one, why they've chosen to do that, that would be helpful to understand also.
Okay, so we'll do our best, I would say, to get this information.
Absolutely.
If we absolutely cannot get information to answer these questions, then we may make a decision to pause it, understanding that's going to delay the development of administrative guidelines. That's going to delay moving forward with the change. So we'll just kind of base that on how our conversation goes on Monday, whether or not we want to take it to vote or table. For a month, this was the reason we put it up in June, so that these questions could be asked and that information could be gathered. So it is unfortunate that it is now November and we're getting to those questions. But
So my question is, have we ever, so I saw this posted in June, yet I've never had a discussion as a board. I don't know if some of you are discussing it, but this is the first time I've actually had a discussion about this. I've seen it on no agenda.
yeah, so it was posted in the board chair notes, Mrs. Mumford, and a request for everybody to review it and take a look and understand the timeline. And we did mention it in the June meeting as well, and the public meetings, so the public was aware. But no, there have been no private conversations that you are not aware of. It was just
You're
done.
talking about email, you're wanting us to have emailed our questions. I guess I'm not clear. This is the first time I've heard any discussion more than the document.
Providing your own commentary on things and not doing what the board's trying to do for our schools. Say
that again.
Let's wrap it up, Rachel.
Okay, it's 8 a.m. We're going to adjourn work session. Have a great